we could probably bring that. Okay, so I hope people have had a chance to look at the minutes. Okay. Good evening. This is the NBR Review Committee. Tonight is August 8th, and we're going to start off with public comment. So, does the public have any comments for us?
Why don't you go ahead and make a public comment?
No, I'm just here to listen.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions as we go forth, please feel free to ask them.
Is there anybody here that wants to make public comment, Lucia?
You want to make a public comment? Okay. Give us your name.
My name is Lucia. When I go to the New Paltz Ballet School, and usually I would see kids crossing the road, so I think a crosswalk by the busy street right by the New Paltz Ballet Studio would be nice, because I see kids crossing to get to where their parents pick them up.
Mm-hmm. That's a very important thing that we've been talking about. There need to be more pedestrian crossings in that stretch of street. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk? Do you have a comment too?
Come on up.
No. Gotta be even. All right.
Yeah, there's 3 of them though.
I have to say your name and then make a quick comment.
Hi, my name is Lucas. I go in camp, Wiltmeet, and
Good job, Lucas. Thank you.
Okay. thank
You're
you.
welcome.
That's
Thank
good.
you. Much appreciated.
Excellent.
So
All right.
that camp's now at the church, right? Which
By the
is
rail trail.
by the rail trail, uses the rail trail.
Okay. Very good. All right. So minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes of July 25th?
Motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We should just clear that we had Don couldn't attend. And he
Yeah, I
sent a
have
proxy.
proxy approvals from both Sue Wynn and from Don Kerr, who looked at the minutes and approved them. So I'll enter that into the record. Okay, so our work tonight includes looking at the draft executive summary of the NBR Review Committee's description of what we did and our findings. And even though I've gone through this several times and people have made very thoughtful corrections, as I finally look at it on the page, I find a lot more corrections that need to be made. So what I'd really like to see is if you have any substantive changes you think we should make. Does everyone have a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay.
The latest version.
You know, I think this reflects everything that we've discussed as a group, and
Okay.
the consensus that we found on anything that we've discussed, I think is very thorough, and I like it a lot.
So just to quickly describe it, we've got a background to our process, the background in terms of zoning changes to this district, our summary of the research we did, the materials we used, and the challenges we found, and finally the critical issues we have discovered in our work in terms of issues with the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, issues with historic Huguenot Street, the need for long-range transportation planning particularly for the Route 32 North corridor that we've been dealing with, but also there needs to be comprehensive infrastructure plan as well, which would include looking at particularly the sewer system and also the water provision in the NBR district. So we address all of those. And then we make zoning change recommendations that we could summarize as returning parcels in the north and northeast part to the current, from the current NBR back to the R1 zone, because those parcels are either residential with on-site water and sewer provisions, or they're just partial lots. The remaining NBR district, we feel, should be divided by the Millbrook, or Tributary 13, as those two names, into two sections. And the southern section seems to meet the criteria for increased density and a mixed-use approach. But the northern section, because it lacks particularly the sewer infrastructure, but also because it needs a plan for the roadway and the streetscape as well, that needs to be dealt with in a different way, probably to return it temporarily to B3 kind of designation until such time as that infrastructure is planned or sequenced. And then one could expand the MUR, which is what we're calling the new southern NBR district, to distinguish it from previous nomenclature. That could be extended northwards, just as the Gateway District on the west side of the village has been recently enlarged to incorporate the former floodplain zones. So that kind of sequenced approach seems better in terms of the lack of really good infrastructure in the northern part of the current NBR. We also have appended in this the diagrams that we have developed to deal with shared parking in an efficient way, and also the streetscape design that we have had made for us, so that you can see various approaches to dealing with a streetscape that matches the complete streets policy that the village adopted in 2013. So that is a very brief summary, and I'm going to go home and catch all these spelling errors and repeated sentences, which I haven't done so far. But if others have suggestions, please let me know about those.
Yeah, I'll send you my comments.
Okay.
There's just one thing that's minor but is substantive, which is that the Ian planning report from 2007 actually never recommended 45 feet.
No, it didn't.
The height was 40 foot
Oh.
maximum. So,
Right,
and I just wanted to note that.
yes. I don't know how that slipped in.
But true, all subsequent actual zoning did suggest 45 feet.
Yeah, but the
higher.
BN plan, as you said,
Was only 40.
and that was just to accommodate peaked roofs.
Yep. So I think ours is more consistent with that at this point, the recommendations.
Yeah.
The only other comment I would make, and I don't know if it would go in the report or how it would go, but I just want to emphasize that I'd like to request that the village board make the infrastructure, meaning both the streetscape as well as the sewer and water infrastructure, a priority, so that we don't have a 5 or 10 year delay before we have the opportunity to return the northern part to something that would be more consistent with what we're trying to do here. So,
Absolutely, yeah. So,
I would say, obviously we've had discussions with the mayor. The mayor's president, he could speak for himself. But,
Sure.
Getting money right now is not the easiest thing.
Sure.
And I would like to see us go ahead with at least the engineering work that we need to get rough numbers to know the volumes of sewer
Right.
and water that would be produced by 3-story buildings along
Right,
this
do some
section.
kind of build out.
And then get an idea of what we would need, how we would work that out physically in the ground.
Right.
I know the mayor's already working on the water line, so this would really be the sewer end of that.
Right.
And then an idea with DOT how far we can extend out on-street parking.
Right.
Because that really divides our types of streetscape that we'd be looking at in the north end.
Right.
Either the on-street parking with the buildings right up to the road, or the bike lane, sidewalk, landscape strip, buildings set behind, small amount of parking in the front, and then more parking to the rear,
Yeah.
offered from the rail trail.
And it wouldn't cost anything to take our suggested streetscape, for example, and meet with DOT and get some feedback about how they feel about doing this up the street.
Well, I mean, your daughter brought up a good point. I
Right.
mean, where is
Where?
the proper point for a crosswalk there?
Right.
Again, it's not appropriate really until we have the bridge over Trip 13 worked out on the one side, because you can't extend it all the way. But at least you could provide some type of pedestrian median on the other side for now.
Yep. So,
Mayor Rogers?
I also wanted to just note, I spoke today with the Department of Public Works, and so I got answers to several questions that might be helpful. So the version of the map that we were looking at the other day is, if it was received from the DPW, it was from their recent version, so that would be accurate. What he wanted to point out was that the forced main that runs, sewer line that runs down 32 now turns on Mulberry Street and continues as a forced main down the rail trail to the sewer plant. So that's one item.
So it's a forced main all the way?
It's forced main now all the way. It used to tie into the gravity system on Mulberry, but it doesn't anymore.
So it's forced from, okay, all the way from my mark.
Yeah, and so Nick said that in order to have high-density development along there and connect into the sewer line, that it would be necessary to install a gravity-fed line that ran back to the pump station and then continue down either to Mulberry and connected there, or potentially go all the way to the sewer plant, depending on a number of factors, some of which would be the flow rates, and again, it would require taking a look at sort of a build out and then determining what that is. In any event, it would, according to him, require a significant upgrade to the pump station. And again, the actual...
That's the one opposite Agway?
Yeah, the Route 32 pump station. And so that, the engineering of that would require, of course, looking at these values and knowing what the build out could be. But he doesn't think that could handle much more capacity at this point. It's aging as it is.
Yeah, that was the other thing we were told, was that it was aging.
Yeah.
It's already needs to be looked at.
Yeah,
It's constantly looked at.
Right. And then the other thing I asked him about was the sewer plant in particular and sort of what its capacities are. And he couldn't answer that specifically, but he felt that either the village engineer or the people who run the sewer plant should be able to either provide some information about average and peak capacity values, or there should be a means for them to obtain that information. And for this district, and actually for planning in general for the village, I think those are important things to get at this point.
I agree. I think the way that we've trying to do this is, we've looked at what could be built in the southern portion, and that seemed to be well within the range that would be acceptable for the existing.
Okay, that's good.
Now,
I don't actually know
the-
that to be true, but sure.
Okay, I thought that was,
I mean, if that's, I just don't know, I haven't asked.
and again, they've been doing a lot on the INR, INR.
The INR stuff, yeah.
So hopefully you can bring some of these high numbers that we get during storms
Mhm.
down.
Right.
And then, but then we'll have a better idea to provide that other section. Do we need to then look at, you
Right.
know, the whole treatment plan, and you have to look at the whole treatment plan, so it's a whole different problem.
Yep.
So, but it is another reason to divide.
Mhm.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Sure.
Particularly given the fact that I've, been sort of searching for that. I'm feeling there's a lot of feedback going on.
Yeah, these are kind of close together, so I
Okay.
think that's part of the issue.
I'll use my outside voice. Okay, other changes that are substantive rather than just duplicated sentences or words or other minor issues which I realize need to be fixed.
I wanted to ask, did you think on, Michael, on page 6?
Yeah. Page
It's been in
6.
years. Oh, wait, okay.
Text.
All right,
Just give me a
so-
number.
This
Well, I
one,
did-
Are we looking at the executive
Yeah.
summary?
No, we're looking at a different one, I
3A?
okay, that might have been an earlier version
think.
I
Yeah,
sent
that's
you.
an early.
Oh, okay.
So
Let me look at the hard copies.
here's the.
I have it. So,
Page 6.
okay. Okay.
So look at 3A.
3A.
Oh yeah, I don't have that in here.
Just, does everyone feel that that encapsulates what we have discussed?
Yeah, because we didn't really know how to put that in, because that's in the northern section, the bit about the buffer,
Right,
which was,
right.
the buffer in the northern section is because we have a 60-foot stream corridor, that's 30 feet on either side. So at least for trip 13, after it turns north and goes up the side of the rail trail,
Right.
you've only got like one side to deal with.
But I thought it was appropriate in this document, not in the red line of the
Right.
zoning, but in this document, because it summarizes additional discussions, and it's not to think that we think the NBR is just a blank slate, but we
Right.
have thought about what the possible options are for it.
And how it
Including
could be
that
developed.
suggestion about light manufacturing or even,
Well, that's the one that Michael
residential.
got to it, I wanted to ask him about.
yeah.
Okay. So what's the question?
Question was, does especially
3A3.
3A3, does
Yeah.
that encapsulate some of what you were talking about as a potential for some parcels in the northern zone if they came in
Mm-hmm.
as something that could be beneficial for the community with jobs involved and such? And it could be done within the impacts to the community,
Right.
whether we would permit something that might be two-story manufacturing,
Right.
light manufacturing, some type of
Yeah.
office complex or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good start. It does encapsulate sort of what I was thinking. I feel a
Yeah, it
little
does start.
nervous about it, just in the sense of, I, how am I trying to say this? The like to try to find ways to encourage, like sort of have the village sort of identify the kinds of things, through conversation, what are the kinds of things we'd like to see there as a community in terms of what could create the sorts of jobs we'd be interested in, whether it be sort of incubator type stuff that would work with the college or other colleges, businesses in the area. I don't know. So I think it's worth putting it in. But I guess
these are only recommendations.
Yeah.
There's kind of encapsulating some of the thoughts we had as we went around the table.
Right.
As to, what other things might be suitable in that northern zone.
Right.
More than just more residential.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that the parcels lend themselves to that.
Different type of building,
Right.
and use.
I guess the only reason I'm nervous is that there are things in here that I feel like are quite specific and sort of on point as to what we would really strongly recommend, and then things like this are more sort of starting points for
Well, and that's why,
conversation.
and that's really what this is meant as, because it's part of what we're saying is it's just not ready yet. We need to do a comprehensive plan, but on the capital plan.
Right.
First, and then have an idea, but,
I mean,
and
I
then
think,
time to include
I think
it
we
or
could
not
break this
include it.
down, Brad, into what about 3A1, which is in areas with on-street parking, the zero front setback scheme would continue from the MUR zone with the associated storefront requirements. What about that one? Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the way the whole thing is worded. 'Cause
Okay,
it starts out by saying there are 2 different site layout patterns, but then there are 3 bullet points numbered points underneath it.
Right, and actually, it's really three.
3
It's
different.
really 2 different site layout patterns, and then third just being an option that had been discussed.
Okay.
yeah, because that's
Alternate
not
uses.
about the
Third is
layout
really
patterns.
alternate use.
All right. So then I wouldn't format it this way.
Yeah, okay.
I would make that 3B or something like
Yeah,
that.
3B and alternate
And that's
uses.
really a different topic,
Consideration of alternate
right?
uses.
I mean, you're talking about sort of street layout patterns,
Yeah.
Right,
and then
No.
3A3 is something different.
yeah, no,
So if you
clearly.
could reformat that to
Give
reflect
it back to you, sure.
and give it back to me, so that, 3A1 and 3A2 do refer to the 2 different site layout patterns,
Right.
whereas 3A3 is a different issue.
Yeah. So
And maybe,
make it 3B.
rephrase that or rethink that as a, and
I'll
that's
take a
more
shot. You wanna
speculative.
take a shot too?
Sure. I'd be happy to. Do I have this?
Sure.
Do I have this in?
I will send it to you.
Yeah.
Things got a little crazy,
Okay.
as.
You may
the-
have sent it today, but I.
Yeah, the agenda refused to get sent.
I know.
The agenda, the whole thing flew away, and the agenda refused to get attached, and then it refused again. And I had to nail it down today. It was like some kind of crazy bird.
And I
It's
actually
like,
provided this after.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah, sure, I'll
you
mark
gave
this
that
up.
to me after the initial send out, so
Yeah.
I will send this again.
Okay.
In fact, I can do it right after the end of our meeting, because I have my babies right here.
Okay, I'll mark it up.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I think it's, as a concept, I think it's fine.
Yeah, the rest of it had been, everyone had a chance to look at, except for the SBLs, because I had to make sure that those were okay,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure they're okay. I spent a lot of time with the parcel viewer.
Yeah, cross-eyed.
And you get cross-eyed doing that, yeah. Zooming in and zooming out.
So I do have one question about the 2 site layouts. The way it
Yeah.
reads, does it mean that the buffer around tributary 13 would only apply to one of the 2 layouts?
Actually, that's a good point. The buffer around 32 would apply in either,
The
for
buffer,
that whole area.
the buffer on tributary 13 would
Yeah.
apply for either layout?
Right,
Okay, so then that should not be under 3A2.
Right.
it should probably be up in 3A.
Yeah, that would be fine. Okay.
Okay, so that last piece on the second half of page 6 needs to be rewritten as
Yep.
to clarify our discussion here.
Okay.
Well, and the only point I would make is that in 3A1, the, with the building set forward,
Yeah.
the buffer wouldn't be as much of a, I guess, as much of a determining factor to me, because, you know, everything is set forward already
Okay.
because of the building layout and the storefront.
Yeah, that's fine. I would
But
just,
it does apply to both, you're right.
from
Yeah.
the planning board's perspective, you never know what somebody's gonna bring in on a site plan. And if they know that they have
Yep.
a specific buffer that's required, then they'll
Yep.
develop their plan accordingly,
Yep.
so. It may-
And I tried to keep it as succinct as possible, so that, you know, it would be easier to both digest and also read. So I kept the references to a bare minimum.
Yeah, no, I like the summary.
Okay, so,
Karen.
any more comments about this document? As I said before, I have the approval of both Don Kerr and Sue Wynn. Sue made some suggestions which were already incorporated, and they said they wish to express their approval and their proxy votes to move forward with it. Okay, then. Let us go on to the second item here, and that is the red line version. Now, this had extensive corrections after I sent it out from both Michael Zula and also Brad Barkley. So, Brad's corrections, I think I have incorporated in this document, this one here. And Michael, are you comfortable with me sharing your comments?
Of course.
Okay.
See, it looks like you included some of my, looks like you included the changes that I made.
I included some changes.
And,
This is,
You're passing these out.
well, I only have so many, because I went through, I had to put in 3 new cartridges today. My goodness. Yeah. All right, let me
Yeah.
just keep these ones, so I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it looks like you addressed some of my comments, but
Yeah.
not all of them.
So, not all of them, because some of them I think merited discussion.
Yeah, that's, I figured, appreciate it.
The first one, I really, I'm mulling over on page 1, your first comment. What about the sides that face Broadhead, Mulberry, or Henry Du Bois? I'm also mulling, so it does make it really complicated,
Right,
because we're talking about the front of the building, and in some cases, we've got 2 fronts, or we could even have 3 fronts.
mhm.
So I'm not quite sure how one should express that in language that isn't overly complex.
Well, I would suggest that, I mean, if we take Zero Place as an example, what the design that came out was that there's non-residential facing 32, there's non-residential facing Mulberry, and there's a mixture of residential, non-residential on the first floor facing the rail trail. I would say one thing to do would be to require that it be non-residential facing 32, and that the other 2 sides shall be limited to uses allowed in 1, and residential uses at the discretion of the planning board. So that, because it's really going to depend on the specific projects and what they're proposing.
Yeah, and Henry Du Bois, you have such a grade change in really the parcels that you're talking about, that, well, just coming down, think about when you're coming down
Yeah.
to the intersection, the parcel that's on the.
Could you please mumble
Sorry.
up,
I'm
speak
sorry.
into the, you are the chief mumbler.
Thank you
It makes it
very much.
very hard to.
Thank you
to,
very much.
Address the minutes.
so-
I'm sorry, Brad.
When you come down Henry Du Bois, approaching 32,
Right.
on the north side,
Yep.
the parking lot is level,
Right.
but as you go further away from the intersection,
Right.
it's cut into the hill.
Sure.
Really bad. So how do you do a storefront that's along the street, along a sidewalk,
Right. You probably would.
with that kind of drop?
Yeah. Right. You wouldn't.
So
those
in that
cases.
case, that's a bad one.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's tied to the on-street parking. I mean, there probably can't be on-street parking on Henry Du Bois.
I'm sure there can't be, and there's probably not really a need to either.
So,
Nor likely on the east side of the street. We already pretty much determined that.
right.
Now, I guess the point is, right, to avoid making it super complicated, I didn't want to ignore the fact that those are street fronts. But, and each of those.
It was an issue with Zero Place.
Yeah, but each of those parcels are so distinct. I mean, there's really only probably 4 parcels that we're talking about. Right, there's 2 on either side, one on either side of Henry Du Bois, there's one on Broadhead, and there's one on that faces Mulberry.
Yeah.
On the west side. That's pretty much it at this point. I mean, you could potentially have several more as you go north on the west side of Route 32. So, but
Right, but I mean, the thing we want to do is try and make it as simple
Right.
as we can, but also as comprehensive as we can, so that the planning board has, the muscle to enact what they really want in a particular situation.
right. So,
Do you want it just left
So-
up to, or we can do it, tie it to the on-street parking with consideration of whether there's on-street parking or not?
yeah, but it isn't just the on-street
It's
parking.
not just the on-street
There's
parking.
also, it's also sort
It's
of,
it's a use thing as well.
Right.
So it's not necessarily related to whether or not you should have on-street parking.
Right.
It's a different issue, I think. So, how about, Michael, if you take a stab at redoing that chunk there that's in blue? Because I think
okay, under
that's,
principal permitted uses?
yes,
Okay,
for just number 2.
Yeah.
And
all right.
not necessarily B, which is the addition of photovoltaic and wind energy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fine, right?
Yeah, no.
And some of those other bits were right, like number 4, development on the 3rd floor. I'm going backwards now.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's only like those first 6 lines, or 4 lines.
It's really numbers 2 and 3 that I
Yeah,
have questions
2 and
about.
3.
Okay, I will take a stab at that.
That, I think, too many cooks would definitely be messing up the broth if we all have a stab at that. So-
If-
Okay.
Then
I'll
the
do
only
that and
question
pass it
is, are we talking about, and we're still talking about special permit for residential on the 1st floor
Yeah,
away from 32?
right.
But the
First
question
floor apartments
was,
shall require a special use
should,
permit.
if we allow the commercial uses allowed on the 1st floor and on the 2nd floor,
Mhm.
we could do that by special permit also.
Do what?
Are we are we allowing the commercial on the 2nd floor just as of right?
Oh, I don't know.
I would think that might be a better as a special permit use, because then you can kind of
Okay.
have some more
I'll make
input
a note about
into
that.
what kind of uses they are.
Okay, should upper, oh no, just should second.
And we're really only talking the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor we've
It's
said
just
is
residential and as of right. Okay, so should second story commercial
requires
SUP.
Special use
SUP
permit.
too.
All right,
So then we'd say first floor, backside, residential with special permit. Second floor, the retail commercial uses with special permit.
okay,
Otherwise residential second, residential third.
all right. I'll think, yeah, I'll look into, all right, so I'll try to address those two issues.
Okay, moving on to 3, prohibited uses. I changed that to take out motor vehicle repair. So what's prohibited now is motor vehicle sales and rentals.
Okay,
So in the more recent version, not this version, but the other version that you have,
all right,
that's gone, the repair is gone, because, as you say, there are so many places already doing that. But actually, in the NBR district, gas stations are prohibited.
right. So, I mean, really, the issue is just the impact on the existing businesses.
Right.
Because we have,
But I mean, the NBR 2015
yeah,
prohibited more gas stations.
right. Well, the idea was not to allow an increase in those uses.
Yeah,
But we do have gas stations, car washes, rental. We actually do have car rental as a sideline in at least one place, as well as car repair. So, yeah, so I mean, it's just a question of the board being comfortable acknowledging those will become non-conforming, but at least in the case of the gas stations, they already are.
non-conforming.
They're non-conforming
Right.
now under the current zoning. So, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right, so, again, your comment on page 2 about the 35 feet
Yep.
thing, that's included in the final version that
Yep.
I sent out. Page 3.
Right.
The landscape buffer, this is kind of a tricky one because they're like different buffering standards in different places. So this is page 3, side yard. All uses 0 to 15 feet max at the discretion of the planning board, with the presumption being the intent of the district is to minimize setbacks. Notwithstanding the foregoing, where adjacent properties are concurrently proposed to be developed at 0 side lot lines and will be conjoined, no side setback is required. A stub connection to access future parking in adjacent lots is required. Okay, so the next thing is number 9, landscape buffers of up to 15 foot in width. So, was your comment referring to that?
So, I had a comment about the 8B, all uses 10-foot minimum rear yard.
Oh, okay,
Then it says along the boundary of
That's-
the rail trail, trees and natural vegetation must be retained and enhanced with a landscape buffer. And I guess the question was,
Oh, this is a landscape
does that
member.
mean that the whole, in other words, you have a 10-foot setback requirement? And is the idea then that you should, the entire 10 feet at a minimum should be landscaped? Is that the point? Or could, because there's nothing specified, the
yeah,
planning board, proposal could come in and have a yard that ran 9 foot and then have a 1 foot buffer of trees. And that's what I'd like to avoid.
right.
I'd like to have
So,
something more
I mean,
specific.
that way, so do you think the whole 10 foot should be the buffer?
Well, I don't know if that's, again, so the problem is, so
The problem is,
we're looking at basically 2 parcels, right?
yes,
In this case, okay.
Well, we looked, didn't you looked and the fence, Roddy's fence is about 10 foot.
Brody's fence, the fence is 10 foot from the back of the building.
And I don't know what the fence means, because I wasn't on
There
your
is a
site.
fence there, a chain link fence,
Oh, okay.
which in some cases indicates sort of where the right-of-way of the rail trail
Okay.
is. So there are only remnants of the chain fence, but behind Roddy's property, the chain link fence is pretty intact. And so there's a 10-foot distance between that chain link fence and the back of the building, his current building.
I mean, I guess I'm not an expert in this. 10 feet is like half the length
Yeah.
of this
10 feet is me
table.
lying
Nothing.
down twice.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just
10
something I'm
foot
sure you
is
have firmly
not
in
much.
your head, right?
What's that? No, it's not. It doesn't seem like a lie.
It's
Problem
not a
is
lot.
that these parcels are so narrow.
I know. Well, that's
Yeah.
the other point, right? I don't want to create I don't want to create a situation that makes the development really unrealistic. But
Well, I think the 10, that's why, if you're gonna have 10 foot, it should be landscape,
okay.
because otherwise the 10 foot is mean.
Okay.
Like you said, 9 foot of yard, one foot of, cedar shrub or something.
All right. So I guess then let's try it for the rear yard that we require a 10-foot landscaped buffer. And then presumably somewhere else, there's a comment about what the planning board can require in terms of the kinds of landscaping we're talking about.
You mean defining landscaping?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, I mean, the assumption is that you want to provide something that's aesthetically appealing, but also could provide a visual and
Right.
noise-based
And also the
buffer.
idea of that was not to cut down any existing trees that are there on the edge of the rail trails.
Well, the
Although-
importance of it is that's the buffer for the historicals.
Right. I mean, the reality is that we're literally talking about 2 parcels.
Yes.
And what's behind the southern parcel is, I would not be opposed to cutting them down, actually. I think they're cottonwood or something. They're trees
Weedy.
that are spindly as a result of the fact that they're pressed up against the back of a building.
Yeah.
And the building is probably within this 10-foot right of
You
way.
mean Salvation
Yeah,
Army?
yeah.
And the
So-
problem is too that some of the ugly vegetation is
Yeah.
on rail trail property.
Probably is, yeah.
I mean, it's not just the trail, there is a
Yeah.
corridor there.
Right, so I guess the idea is that, I mean, this might be useful further up where the parcels are much deeper and,
Yeah,
but I think in the case of these 2 parcels, the goal is to try to create a buffer that will be, like I said, aesthetically appealing when you're on the rail trail and for whoever's working or living on those parcels, but also provide a barrier for
level of
noise and
screening.
sound.
yeah.
If you can use what's there, that's great. I'm not convinced that you necessarily can in those 2
Okay, so
cases.
how do we want to phrase that? This is only along the boundary of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail.
Right.
So, along the boundary of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail.
I would just add, along the boundary of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, existing trees and natural vegetation,
Should be retained.
shall be retained, unless, we can't say shall be retained at the discretion of the planning board, can we?
No.
Well, why not?
Well, can't use shall and then give them discretion, we have to use a different,
Yeah.
should be retained,
As far as practical,
yeah.
I'm thinking of those circumstances where you might think of having
No,
fence that
see, I would say,
growing out of a driveway or town and country is a classic example, it's pretty thoroughly ugly there.
I would say
Dumpsters.
shall be retained at the discretion of the planning board, meaning the planning board has the absolute right to
Okay.
require you to do that.
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
See, it
All
shall be
right, so
retained at the
existing trees
discretion of
and
the
natural
planning board.
vegetation
So
shall
that
be
gives you the right
retained
to say, all
at
right,
the
you can't cut
discretion of the
this.
planning board. So you
Okay.
could say, no, you need to put in the landscape buffer.
And enhance with a 10-foot landscape buffer. So that's what I would suggest.
Must be retained at the discretion
shall be retained at the discretion of the planning board and enhanced with a 10-foot landscape buffer.
As part of a 10-foot landscape buffer.
As part, okay, yeah, let's reword it.
Because
So
we
they don't think
can't,
it's
we
both.
can't make them, yeah, we
Both.
can't make them say, you gotta keep the tree,
And
and
add
your
the
10
10
foot
feet.
starts at the end of that tree.
Yeah, no, right,
Okay,
good point.
so
As part.
what we've got is along the Walker Valley Rail Trail, existing trees and natural vegetation shall be retained at the discretion of the planning board and enhanced as part of the 10-foot buffer.
Okay.
Okay. All righty.
Okay,
Required 10-foot buffer. Or is that,
You might want to also say maintains good plantings, so that people don't think you're enhancing it with a wall or.
Mm-hmm.
Walsh.
you know,
Well- okay.
Okay,
No, that's.
yep.
So that's that one, then the
Okay,
other
now
one.
number 9 is a
Right.
different one, and this has to do with parking areas, as distinct from rear yards. So landscape buffers of up to 15 foot in width of a density so as to block visibility of parking areas may be required by the planning board.
Okay.
So this is a different thing, so you say
Sure.
they might be at odds, but one is to do with the rear yard and the other is to do with parking areas.
Right, but if the parking's in the rear, then which number?
well, are we
Well, the
still
parking-
saying side or rear?
In a,
Well, no, this is a different item. This is
So-
an item to do with parking. So this deals with also parcels on the other side of the road. This is not just the
right,
Wallkill Rail Trail side.
okay. So, but for the parcels that are on the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail side, if they have parking that is either in the rear, to the rear of the building or to the side of the building and extends all the way to the rear, to the,
I don't see how that can happen because there's just no space for those parcels, not the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail ones. The ones
no space for what?
for parking behind the buildings.
No, but there may well be parking on the side of the building that extends all the way to the
Okay.
rear of the parcel.
Yeah,
So now which number takes precedence, the 15 foot or the 10 foot? That's all I need. So
that was to deal with, well, first of all, this is retained from the current NBR.
no, I get that,
Yeah.
but the other
So-
one isn't, so that's why I'm, so in other words, let's use Zero Place as an example. So the parking lot extends from Route 32 to the end of the parcel against the rail trail. So if the planning board was looking at this and it said, you have to have a 10-foot minimum landscape buffer in the rear, but you also need to have up to 15 feet behind your parking lot.
Well, I would think that
So I guess we could.
that's the same, no, because you don't have to have up to 15. Your 10 is
So it'd
up
be,
to 15.
so in other words, in other words, this gives us the option.
Right.
It gives the planning board the option of extending the buffer behind a parking lot against
For
the
another
rail trail
5 feet.
For another 5 feet.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine, I can live with that.
And if you
Okay.
look under your rear yard,
Yeah.
all uses, it's 10-foot minimum.
Yeah, no, I understand it's
So-
between 10 and 15, I just wanted to,
yes.
I just wanted to talk it through and make sure.
Okay, so
No,
the
that's fine.
up
We
to
agree.
15 gives you another 5 feet to play with.
Yep, that's fine.
That's another one of me lying down. Okay, so
Thanks.
let's move these illustrations into this section or provide more ones. Oh, that's, I know what that means.
So instead of having somebody have to go to page 31
Yeah.
of the comprehensive plan, let's include them in this suggested
Okay,
zoning change.
I can
And for
scan
sim-
those and put them.
Yeah, for simplicity, let's just use
Okay,
those.
all right, scan those from comp plan.
Yep.
Okay,
I mean,
All
you can,
right.
the plan is also online.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I was gonna, you
But
might,
it's a PDF, so you have to scan it and then,
or you can export it to your computer and then take that page 31 and select the item that you want and then actually just paste it in here.
right.
Or you could scan it. So, okay.
Okay.
So the next one's
So
about
the
shop
next
windows.
question was about shop fronts. Well, I've got some imagery I want to show people
Okay.
about that today. So that's the other item that is under other business. So,
I didn't mean widows, I meant windows.
oh, widows, yes, we have
Yeah.
widows. Widows walks, we need some of those. Those would be cool. All right, so the next one is page 5, and you deleted something there.
A comma.
Oh,
Oh, right.
It's all just editorial.
oh, but that's lovely.
I think that's it for my comments. Thank you, that's all of them.
Okay.
All righty. Okay, so with those amendments, are we comfortable with submitting this document?
So I will, if you say yes, it's going to be with language to be added
Yes,
at a
okay.
later time.
With,
So you all will need to consider what I'm going to add to part.
okay, so
Two.
with future amendments, which will be approved
Yeah.
accordingly, the rest of it is acceptable,
Mhm.
It's the lawyer's saying substantially this form.
substantially in this form, with,
That's the language. Okay.
okay, so
Yeah.
substantially approved. Okay, all in favor of that? Aye. Opposed? And again, I have the proxy vote of Sue Wynn and Don Carr for moving ahead with this. I'll inform them of our changes. Okay, so for other business, what I wanted to do, I have spent quite a bit of time exploring pictures. I was hoping that there would be some volunteer pictures,
Sorry.
but I didn't have it, so that's all right. So I sent everybody this picture,
That
which,
was me. Now you don't worry about
No, me too.
everybody, I asked everybody
Yeah,
for
no, I
pictures.
know, I have my
Yeah,
notes,
yeah.
just to do my homework.
So
I have it in front of me.
this is what Wikipedia thinks is New Paltz,
Yeah.
all right? So I guess that is our quintessential essence. That's one way of looking at it. I found, I've been looking for schematics because I like those better than other things, but I've had a lot of trouble finding them. This I found in terms of a storefront. One is a schematic and the other is a picture.
That's here.
it.
So,
Wild West.
looks like the Wild West.
Yeah.
No, it's just got some awnings. The top one is a schematic. That looks like the guy is gonna go and rob the store, actually. You see, he's got some
Yes, he
kind
does
of
have some type
stick.
of weapon. This
Yeah.
guy's got some type of weapon.
He's going, that's his shadow.
Yeah, shotgun, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like a shotgun, I think. So that's just showing you in a little schematic how much glazing you need and how the awning works and how the bottom story should look if it's a storefront.
It is, though, interesting when you look at that, this
Geez,
building,
first floor.
and then look at the end building here. It's a very common kind of design,
Yeah, it
that
is.
historic
Uh-huh.
front.
Well, actually,
Yeah, I
the
don't like the
fenestration
window.
has a
No,
little
I-
more variation.
And that's
Careful
what
with
I
windows.
think, you get a better idea of the size of the glass if that awning wasn't
Right.
there. Because
Yeah,
when
they
those
should have-
awnings are up, that's a pretty large percentage of glass
Yeah,
on
it
that
is.
frontage.
Um,
Don't you
Anyway,
think?
I'm still looking. We also have the Lloyd example, but I don't really like that very much.
no.
Kind of 29W-ish.
it is. There were other examples of schematics that were in the local Lloyd law filing that we looked at. I didn't like those very much either. So, that would be like, this thing is looking at setbacks. I think you were interested in fenestration, right?
I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, we had an application recently for a building off of Main Street that the aspect ratio on the windows was almost 1-to-1, and it just looks inappropriate. It looks more like a dormitory or a barracks. I want to make sure that we encourage, because I noticed I think they had something like that in the Lloyd. I just would like through either images or images and text to ensure that we have more of the historical and typical
Right.
windows where the aspect
so
ratio is horizontal.
What about that schematic there?
This one. Yeah, that's fine. As long as, we identify.
The other schematic they had in the Lloyd thing is this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fine. It's just to make sure that upper story windows have a vertical
A vertical
dominant.
expression.
Yeah, so that the
Yeah.
ratio of vertical to horizontal is whatever it's supposed to be, at least 2-to-1 or 2.5.
Here's another thing
just
I
don't know.
found, just before I was.
Yeah, this is great, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because that way, at least you've got the terminology there.
Yeah, I think that's,
Okay, so I did want to show you, I went on an expedition on Sunday.
I wanted to make one comment about the New Paltz one too, if it's
Go ahead.
appropriate.
Go ahead.
The image that you're showing includes a one-story building.
Yep.
And I would like to suggest that we use
Crop it?
a version that's cropped.
Yeah.
This is also off the internet,
Yeah,
and I don't remember where it's from specifically,
Yeah,
but just make sure that we focus on the
Yeah.
buildings that are
yeah,
multi-story.
that's the difficulty is,
Good.
So I can send you this image and I can
Okay,
find
that-
it, I'll
that's-
find the source of it. I
that'd
don't-
be great.
But we could also just crop it, I can easily do that.
that's
Um,
you can leave,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
awning
this
in
is,
front of the awning. like
yeah,
there's
this is
another door
fine,
there.
just
Yeah.
because now the focus is on the 2
Right.
and 3 stories and the different different roof lines. There are a couple of other good images of New Paltz from other directions that show some other variations.
Yeah, I've got some others
Anyway,
here.
you probably do.
So, I went to LaGrange on Sunday. LaGrange is a sort of redesigned, how would you put it, Brad? Village center, Freedom
Supposed to be
Plains.
an old neighborhood type center.
Yeah. So,
It's where one DOT has some of their roundabouts at either end.
Oh,
And
really?
in the middle.
So- this is,
Right in front of
I also
Arlington
wanted to
School.
look at the
Right in
streetscape
front of
here.
Arlington School.
So these are some of the buildings. They're not really, they're sort of oldie-looking buildings in a new context. And after, I can step through them more slowly. So I looked at those.
Those I wasn't particularly, I like the ones on the other side better. Like
These ones, that
yeah.
one's better.
And again, it is rather
Although,
regular
and then
commercial.
these are the New Paltz ones.
I like the New Paltz ones better.
Well,
That's good.
that's what, I'm saying,
That's a great
That's good.
photo.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm partly teasing, but I just.
no, I know.
Like those
That's a
are,
good picture.
those are.
This thing, I cropped that thing out, okay. So, yeah, the New Paltz ones, we could use those instead,
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Definitely.
okay? So, yeah, because I don't know if those kind of newly designed old buildings really work very well. For example, this one here, stop, don't go forward, go back. Nope, not that far.
These pictures say New Paltz. You show LaGrange, it looks like Orlando to me.
Yeah, I know. All right, well, we'll stick with New Paltz then. That's a good one.
Have a character to those structures.
Yeah, so this one here across the street, I don't think it works very well, and I think it's really fussy, but I think people might think it was more sort of in tune rather than trying to imitate New Paltz. Okay, this one.
Yeah.
So that one's, but it's sort of fussy, I think, you know?
Yeah,
It's
there's
got-
too much going on.
It's too much going on up there. We've got a widow's walk up here. And we've got like too much in the way of fenestration from too many different code books.
Mhm.
That looks like you're just trying too hard,
Yeah,
you know?
that's what I came
Just
away
too
with.
much.
All right, so we go with the other pictures of
Yeah.
New Paltz?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All righty, that's good. So I
You know,
will,
the only other place I could think of that came to mind is Main Street in Rhinebeck.
Right.
Is what?
Main
Rhinebeck.
Street in Rhinebeck.
yeah, but that's Rhinebeck Main Street, and, you know,
And that is very, upscale,
yeah.
Well,
to say
the
the least.
Market Street in Rhinebeck is, the thing is that I feel like we're never going to obtain, I don't see an easy way that we're going to necessarily attain this kind of side-by-side building
Yeah.
No,
along.
but if somebody
32.
comes in with a plan for something that's gonna
Right.
occupy 40 feet,
Right.
you can have that kind of articulation so that
Right.
it's a big building, but it looks
Looks like
like
a series of small.
a series of small buildings, and
Right.
that's what we're aiming for in trying to suggest building designs, like
Right.
break up the mass of the building by making it look like a bit of
Right.
Main Street.
Yeah, and that's fine. So, okay. Then I would focus on the stuff that we have on our Main Street mostly,
Yeah.
I think. And not just this one block, but you
Yeah.
can look across the street and down slightly to the west and south on the side.
It gets a little messy.
It does, but there's some interesting I'll send you a few pictures I found today. There's some,
Okay,
I don't know
so
if I
why
can
don't
find
you
it
send me
quickly.
the pictures that, and if anybody else has some promised pictures they just accidentally forgot to send me, then I can send some pics around and we can, pick our top 6 pics, or how many do you think we should go for?
like 3, something
Yeah,
like that.
I think it'll pick itself.
Okay,
You know,
yeah,
there are
that's
4 that are very
typically
close, or 3 that are
what's
very,
happened. All right then, other business.
Oh, there's the one I want to show you. This is just,
Okay.
it is busy, but it's interesting, the roof line articulations.
Oh,
Those are
yeah.
2 separate buildings.
Mhm.
They're not, it's actually off Main Street, right? It's the corner.
Yeah, I know that corner very well.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah,
And, but I had never noticed that those 2 buildings have a related roof line. This is the one that was built around mid-1980s
Yeah.
after the fire,
mhm.
so.
Although that's a kind of strange building.
It is, but from this angle, it looks good, so.
Yeah, well, that's true of certain buildings in
Yeah.
downtown New Paltz. You have to like move around, or sometimes it looks like some crazy child's drawing,
Yeah.
and from certain aspects. Okay, so our next move is to make the changes that we've suggested today, which seem to be fairly minor, to come together with some building designs we feel comfortable with. And then in terms of planning our next meeting, I know that the one that's on the calendar at the moment for the 23rd is going to be an impossibility. So I'm hoping that we can do something in the first week of September to have a very brief meeting that basically says, this is, we've made all the changes, and it would only have to be a really brief meeting. So one of the possibilities is, there's Wednesday, the 6th of September, nothing else is going on, at 5 o'clock. That is right after Labor Day,
That's the Wednesday, actually.
the Wednesday after Labor Day.
It's fine with me.
Tuesday would be a little tight, I think.
Yeah, I have a meeting that
The
night.
Tuesday has a
We have
village
a planning
board meeting, which is
All
good.
right, well, that's before the 7th, so.
So could we do it on the
I think that's a
6th?
good idea.
Sure, that's
And,
fine.
and it'll be really brief because we've kind of done all our homework. Okay, does anyone have any other business that we need to address? Okay,
Just want to make sure.
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you seconded.
I seconded.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, audience, and especially thank you to our young commentators.
Thankful no sibling bloodshed has been seen today.